Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Alex Walker, who's the CEO of East Star Resources, who are focused on the discovery and development of gold, rare earths, and copper deposits in Kazakhstan. Alex is a mining investment banker and resources executive based full-time in Almaty in Kazakhstan. He's originally from Australia and is also a former captain in the Australian Army Reserves. And he has more than 15 years experience in mining finance and management. And he's going to talk to us about East Star Resources, what progress they're making and what they're potentially looking to do in the future. So that's welcome, Alex, to the podcast. How you doing, Alex?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, Rob. Thanks for that detailed introduction. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm going to flip the question back to you and ask you to obviously give us a little bit more detail about your career and your background. Obviously, I just gave just a quick summary there, but wondering if you can tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your career, a little bit about obviously your mining experience, and then we go into obviously more questions and more detail around the company.
Certainly. So yeah, as you said, I've been in the mining game, principally in mining finance, for about the last 17 odd years now. I started my career with Patterson Securities, which is a broking firm in Perth of Western Australia. And as you would want to do in Perth, there's very little else but to become an expert in mining. And so I went down that path, and being surrounded by, I think, some of the industry's greatest in terms of their understanding of the business for exploration and development of mineral projects. So I was in Perth for 7 years. I moved to London in 2013 to do the same thing, mining finance and investment banking, principally focused on juniors to mid-tier mining companies, raising capital and structuring deals. I did 12 months with Patterson's in London and moved to a boutique London firm. At that time, I did 3 years with that firm, quite successful, even though the markets were quite difficult over those periods. And then moved to Pareto Securities, which is a large Norwegian firm, before jumping ship and joining the other side. During that time, I continued to study. I did various bits of study in finance, and I did a master's of mineral economics, which sort of bumped me up the education scale on financing mines and developing financing exploration, developing mines. The jump ship was to start a company called Scandi Vanadium. I did that with a chap called David Minchin, who was a geologist with AMED Funds, which is one of the mining private equity funds out of London. So we pegged some ground in southern Sweden for sedimentary vanadium deposits. Still to this day, we believe it's probably one of the largest vanadium deposits in the world. But the time that we started pegging vanadium was about $4, and as we listed the company, it was about $26, $27. And then as we commenced the following 12 months of progressing towards exploration drilling, the vanadium price came back quite drastically as well. And we had a few hurdles in Sweden in terms of permitting, and that's actually a significant reason why we've ended up in Kazakhstan today. So we saw that one through. We ended up moving on from that company, but that company was the seed of the idea for us moving to Kazakhstan. And principally looking actually downtrend from a company called Ferroalloy Resources, who had quite a significant market capitalization at the time and was successfully producing vanadium from a sediment-hosted deposit. So we didn't find what we were looking for on that front, but we did find a hell of a lot more in terms of copper, gold, and other interesting things in Kazakhstan. And we sort of fell in love with the exploration potential of the place. And here we are a little bit later. It was too good an opportunity to pass up. So I've moved my family here. We've lived here just over a year now, and we are very much getting on with things. And we're having a really, really good, very, very interesting time here.
Yeah. Before we talk about East Star Resources, there was a couple of questions. You just mentioned, obviously, you moved your family to Almaty. What's that experience like?
Well, I mean, being here is wonderful. Moving's always a bit of a task, isn't it? Especially, when you're a junior company, you don't have all of the support network of being a major and having, transition agents and things like that to set you up with bank accounts. So, we do everything ourselves, finding a place to rent, school for the children, bank accounts, and thankfully we'd done all that stuff for the company years earlier. So we'd had a little bit of infrastructure in place, good accountants and so on. So, it's always a bit of a battle putting all those things together, but I've got a wonderfully supportive family, as you can imagine. So we actually had a really good time with things. It didn't take too long. It was a couple of months before we were nicely settled into a house. The kids were in jet ski sad, or at least my daughter was at the time, kindergarten, and rolling on with things quite nicely. But it does take a long time to settle in from a holistic perspective, because we want nothing more than to spend extra time exploring the country. But of course, there was a lot of work to be done before we could get stuck in and do too much travel. So hopefully this year we'll manage to get out as a family and see the country a little bit more as well.
Yeah, and also you were in the Australian Army Reserves. What have you learned from being in the army that you could? What are some of the skills and experience that you probably learned that you could bring into the mining industry? I mean, I've interviewed a few people that have been in their respective armies in their certain countries. What would you say some of the skills and experience that you've learned being in the army that you've brought into the industry?
Goodness, that's a good question, which I haven't put too much time and effort into in the past. I could go into a lot of detail on that, I'm sure, about critical analysis and so on. But the reality of it is the one key thing that you take out of the military and that you can take out of working in junior exploration is grit. There's a lot of scenarios where things don't go perfectly right, or you constantly get knocked down, or you come up against a hurdle, or simply you're just out in the middle of nowhere, pushing through, solving logistics issues, as fast as humanly possible to make sure that the exploration dollars get spent well. So it's just the sheer capacity to come across a problem and use every means necessary to work your way through that problem and not stopping till it's resolved. And so, really, if I could summarize it with one word, it would simply be grit.
Yeah. So I wonder if you can just give us, tell the audience a little bit about eStar Resources, an overview from above.
Sure. So eStar listed on the London Stock Exchange on the 10th of January of this year. It was a process we'd been operating in country for a couple of years, prior to that. In essence, we had 4 licenses in joint venture with Talcan Samruk, which I was operating out of Australia as we were moving all of the legal agreements and all of the operating infrastructure forward. So on listing, we started with those 4 assets. And since then, we've pegged another 4 licenses and done a joint venture on 1 license, which has expanded the portfolio and the optionality considerably. What we have in terms of those licenses, we've got 2 gold licenses in the Chihuili orogenic gold belt, both of which have been drilled this year with nearly 5,000 meters of drilling. We have 5 licenses in the Rudny Altai volcanogenic massive sulfide belt in the east region of Kazakhstan, which are all incredibly exciting, and we've conducted a heliborne magnetic survey on those this year. And we did a joint venture with a local group on a deposit in East Kostanai called the Talaric heavy rare earth deposit, which we believe to be an ionic clay. And that was about 10 square kilometers, and we pegged another 134 square kilometers in that region to gain the extra strike above the granite. We've also managed to drill that this year as well. So it's been a very, very busy year for eStar. We've got quite the diversified portfolio, and we hope that that's really going to give us a number of opportunities for some real success into 2023. Yeah.
Obviously, before we started recording, and you seem pretty upbeat with with everything that you've got in front of you. I wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about the in more detail, the rare earths projects that you've got.
Certainly. So this was presented to us by a local company, and we did some due diligence on the vendors first. And I can't say, we couldn't be dealing with a higher quality group of people. The people behind it have had some very, very successful exits in terms of selling their gold mines for $200 million to Kaz Minerals a number of years ago. They've got operating gold mines in West Kostanay. And one of the other partners is a senior partner at one of the principal law firms in Kazakhstan and head of natural resources. And in fact, voted one of the best lawyers in Kazakhstan 2 years running as well. So highly credible partners. And they sent us this project, or they approached us with this project. And the first thing I did, of course, being shown rare earths, is I sent it to one of my fellow vendors, a chap by the name of Dr. Rainer Elmies. And Dr. Elmies is a geologist in Namibia. And he's got a number of discoveries to his name. He's an incredible out-of-the-box thinker. But one of the discoveries he does have to his name is the asset that's owned by Namibia Critical Minerals, which is a rare earths deposit in Namibia, which they're currently doing feasibility work on with JOGMEC. And so Rainer is unequivocally one of the top whatever X% of rare earth experts in the world, certainly from a geologist perspective. So when he told me that I can't ignore this, I have to take it very, very seriously, because it looks like it's got the same geochemical signature of the ionic clays of South China. Of course, who am I to argue? So once he said that, we did take it seriously. We spent a lot of extra time doing due diligence. There's a number of historical reports on this asset, and those historical reports gave an old 1994 GKZ resource model, so non-JORC or 43101 compliant resource model of just under 20,000 tonnes of contained rare earth oxides plus yttrium. So for us, we were quite confident that the deposit was there. Furthermore, the details on the metallurgy, or I should say the lithology of the deposit, showed that it was hosted in kaolitic clays. And therein lies the point about the geochemical signature of the clays of South China. And the critical part there is that this is where most of the world gets their heavy rare earths from. Heavy rare earths often sit in some of these major hard rock deposits and can often be a small part of the liberation of minerals that is taken from those deposits. But by and large, the vast majority of these heavy rare earths come from these ionic clays. And so that's very exciting for us. And we therefore decided to do a farming agreement with this group, Phoenix Mining. The farming agreement was wonderful terms for us. It was, essentially money in the ground that would allow us to de-risk the project considerably before any cash out, in inverted commas, and the cash out being shares that are issued to the vendors at the time. So we can earn up to 90% of the project by spending $1 million and issuing $500,000 in shares. And that's, sorry, to be clear, that's up to 75% over 2 tranches, and then up to 90% to take it through to bankable feasibility study. So we're really excited by this. We got our approvals through to drill very, very quickly. Very impressed with our team to have achieved that within 2 to 3 months. And that allowed us to sneak in a quick drill program before winter really kicked in, which was very beneficial for us. So we conducted that program in October, and we drilled 1,001 meters. And what that has shown us with the detail we have so far is that 27 of the 30 boreholes that we drilled intersected kaolitic clay. The average width of those kaolitic clays was 32 meters, which is significant and higher than the average width of the historical deposit, which was only 20 meters. And we have been shooting it with the PXRF, which is a portable X-ray fluorescence device, which can assist us with guidance on yttrium grades. And we're very confident that the yttrium grades are there and that they will result in some good total rare earth oxide grades for us to report next year when the assays are returned. And I think the second part of that is that we intend on doing leach test work. So what the idea of that is we'll conduct a 5-stage sequential leach, and hopefully that will give us the indication that the minerals, the rare earth minerals, are very loosely bound or easily liberated from these calanitic clays. What we tend to have, and again in the ones in South China, is they use quite a benign acid leach. So you're talking literally like a salt, an ammonium sulfate or something along those lines. So a very benign leach that gives you quite a high percentage liberation. And that is exactly the sort of thing that makes these deposits both economic, but also very environmentally friendly. They're shallow, they're clays, so there's no big strip ratio, there's no crushing, no grinding. It's literally an earth moving process and then leaching before you get your concentrate to send to the market. So very, very exciting from a potential perspective. And it won't be, investors won't have to wait very long to find out how real this thing is.
Yeah. You're involved in rare earths, copper and gold. Is there a reason why you've got a wide range of diverse of portfolio?
Yes, certainly. So Kazakhstan really is this sort of land of opportunity. I've got a phrase that I use, which is it's Western Australia in the 1970s. I had someone from SRK say, more like the 1950s, Alex. And that's not a downplay on Kazakhstan. What that is that's, the exploration funding that went into Western Australia over the last 50 years has simply not happened here for a number of relatively obvious reasons. And the country has lacked a major discovery, since the 1970s. And once again, that's purely from an exploration spend perspective. And I can point to numerous examples of resource depletion, in mines in even in the east region where we are in the Woodney Altai belt with Kaz Minerals. And all of the data that we have shows that there is next to no exploration work that's occurred there since the early 80s. So Kazakhstan has this opportunity, and what we wanted to do was not be a one-trick pony. We certainly did not want to rest on our laurels or find an asset that we had to that you end up pushing a potentially bad or marginal asset because it's the only one you have. There was a lot for us to do. We could very comfortably do a lot more, but we thought this is the right size of portfolio which offers investors the diversity that will allow, with the cash balance that we had, that will allow us to, let's say, significantly de-risk these assets from an exploration perspective and decide which ones are capable of being taken forward to, resource drill out, scoping study, and hopefully at some stage development. So that's the reason we've got such a diverse portfolio. And I've got to say, so far we're pretty happy with the fact that we've done that. We really do have at least 3 potential company making assets in the rare earths, in the copper, and in the gold.
And what's your experience in as a junior miner going into Kazakhstan? And I suppose if there was other companies looking to do business in Kazakhstan, what's your experience been, and what advice would you give another mining company potentially looking at Kazakhstan as a mining jurisdiction?
Sure. The experience has been very positive all in all. It hasn't been one without its learning hurdles, of course. There's different systems in place, there's obviously different languages, and understanding the culture and the systems and the language is a critical hurdle to get through. For me, the step change was moving here. Being a part of the community, being able to go out for a drink with the major miners who are here already investing significant amounts of capital or who have been here for a long time, such as Rio Tinto. Over 15 years they've been here, and they've made a number of discoveries in that time. Local companies, local service providers, local law firms, having these people in my friendship group, I should say, it is a game changer in terms of being able to operate efficiently and effectively. So that was the critical step for us. For juniors looking to get into the space, there's still a few small hurdles. It's not impossible by any stretch, but there's a few small hurdles, like setting up local bank accounts and so on. You need to have good, trustworthy accountants in place, or you need to move here or come here for a reasonable period of time and do it all yourself. But once you've got the team in place, which we have now, you can execute things very, very, very quickly. There's a few nuances in the mineral law which provide for ambiguity, but it's something which we're lobbying, purely for a clarity perspective rather than than any potential operating issue. But I would say, if you're a junior looking for projects, come to Kazakhstan. There is an insane amount of land here, huge amounts of prospectivity, and in my view, the more the merrier. One success will be everybody's success, and there really is that opportunity.
And talking about the projects, how do you expect to monetize each of the projects you're involved in?
Sure. We've specifically looked at projects in areas where they have large mine potential, but without a large mine requirement. We're not sitting in the middle of the Sahara or Africa, which says you need 1 million or 2 million ounces, to get a project up and running. The infrastructure in Kazakhstan is immense. There are mills and smelters, all throughout the country that more often than not are hungry. And so you have a lot of optionality. And why don't I give some specific examples on that case? For the rare earths, for example, the local town, which is about sort of 40-50 kilometers away, is called Arkalik, and it was about 20% of the USSR's bauxite production until actually not that long ago. And those facilities are still very much in place. They're winding down at the moment. But there are railheads, there are power lines, there is trucking expertise and drilling expertise and mining expertise and engineering expertise in this small town that in essence would be like being in the absolute middle of Western Australia. And the local Akim, which is sort of the mayor, has said to us as well, when you're ready to develop, let us know. We have a mandate to bring power and water to site, so we can do that for you to get the project up and running. So the willingness is just absolutely fantastic. In our east region on the copper projects, you've got two major producers. You've got Kaz Minerals and you have Kazzinc, which is effectively 70% Glencore and about 30% Talcan Samruk, who's also our joint venture partner in a couple of those licenses. Both those companies have hungry mills, and both those companies have hungry smelters that are very, very close. Power, water, rail, absolutely everything going right through the region. So you could not want for better infrastructure. So although we feel that we have a real opportunity to make a significant VMS discovery or discoveries, more to the point, there's not a necessity to have 20 or 30 or 50 million tons. If you discover a 5 million ton VMS project, and on the average grades of the belt, we truly believe that will be still easily monetizable by selling or either at mine gate or processed or to one of these hungry mills and smelters. And again, you're not beholden to one player in that instance, because there's two parties which would happily bid over qualified ore. So for us, it makes perfect sense. There's no requirement to sell to a major as your only exit. We have a number of different opportunities or chances here to monetize these assets. And we look forward to demonstrating that in the next year or two.
Can you tell us a little bit about the management team and those that are involved with eStar?
Certainly. So The board of directors is fourfold. We've got all the requisite skill sets. We've got the banker, the accountant, the lawyer, and the geologist. The geologist is David Minchin, whom I mentioned before, from AMED Funds and as the CEO of Scandinavian. He's a wonderful economic geologist. Unbelievably practical in his analysis of projects in the market. We have Sandy Bartlett's our chairman, who has FTSE 250, I want to say, experience in legal fields and in business development, and is a well-known person around the London finance markets, particularly in small to mid-cap mining. And we have Anthony Eastman, who's our requisite accountant, also with a lot of business development and experience in small and mid-cap mining, but making sure that our accounts are 100% up to date. In country, we've got a number of different people on our advisory team. So I mentioned before Dr. Rainer Elmies. I can't rate highly enough the critical analysis that he approaches projects with. Very, very practical, very in-depth analysis, and a person who has a number of discoveries. I think 4 or 5 discoveries to his name in Namibia. He works for a Namibian family office and is operating. I can't remember how many, but certainly 2 or 3 operating mines at the moment, as well as a number of exploration projects, and moving into development, including Namibia Critical Minerals. So he's an exceptional talent to have as a sounding board and project reviewer. We have Vladimir Krupnik, who is based in Perth and spent 20 years in Kazakhstan. He's a mine geologist. So he was actually the principal mine geologist for Kaz Minerals for some time. Well, at the time, I believe it was Kazakhmis, a combined entity. And after that, Altin Almas. And Altin Almas owned the Akbakai project, which is the 6 to 8 million ounce project on the Tuila orogenic gold belt, where our gold projects are based. So Vlad very much knows what an economic gold project looks like, and can pick these things fairly early from his understanding of mine geology. And he's just a fantastic addition, not least of which, of course, his networks in Kazakhstan are fantastic. And on the ground, now the team's changed up a little bit recently, but we have a couple of principal geologists. We have, lawyer, office manager, environmental specialist, and GIS specialist who's a PhD out of Astana. So we're really, really happy with the team. And I think that the amount of work that we've achieved this year, the amount we've actually done, is all we need to do on our resumes to demonstrate how good this team is at executing work programs and getting things done.
I've got a couple more questions. Why should people obviously follow and invest in eStar?
Sure. So eStar, what I believe eStar is just absolutely wonderful optionality for investors. We're offering a number of different projects, any one of which has the opportunity to be a company maker. But from the data that we've seen to date, there's very likely, we hope that there'll be more than one. The team has experience in capital markets. We've got experience in discoveries, and we've got experience in Kazakhstan as a significant combined team. And we're getting a lot done. So the dollars that we are given by investors is going in the ground, is very much going in the ground towards achieving results. I believe that the rare earths project shows just absolutely wonderful optionality, and I can say that we have had approaches by a number of people saying as soon as we get that leach test work back and we've got a strong indication that there's an economic project there, they'll be very interested to participate in that project. And I can say the same thing about the copper as well in the East region. The gold projects, very much the same. The size of those gold projects, well, the potential size is significant. To the tune of, we're looking for plus million ounces. But even without that, we've had a number of people say, look, if there's an option to develop even a smaller mine here, we'd be really happy to participate. So what I think A-Star is I wouldn't even, I've likened it in the past to lottery tickets, but I'm so hesitant to do that because the amount of data we have, it would be a very, very comparatively low risk lottery, I feel, for real company making assets. So committed team working incredibly hard to convert those options to reality.
And lastly, what's the outlook for the next 6 to 9 months? And is there anything else you want to share with our audience?
Sure. Project by project, and I'll simply work west to east from a geographical location. So the 1,000 meters of drilling on the rare earths will be sampled and sent as composites to the labs in the next few weeks. We expect that to occur. So we will have the assays for that probably into early next year, as well as the leach test work, and that will tell us really if we've got a rare earths project that we need to start converting to JORC resources, do the step out drilling to confirm the size, and start doing the bulk sampling to develop a process flow sheet. We've got 5,000 meters of gold assay results, which are due, and 4 targets were drilled for the gold, and we really hope to convert a couple of those into prospective resources that will tell us whether or not we've got a gold project. And we expect to be drilling the copper projects as well. And so just to be clear on that one, we flew over 3,800 line kilometers of heli-borne EM survey last year. From those surveys, we take thousands of anomalies and we develop them down to 50 essentially EM confirmed EM anomalies. And from there, they're broken down further to, in terms of priorities. And then the priorities we Maxwell modeled, and the Maxwell model has given us drilling targets. So we have 4 drill-ready targets. We expect, and any one of those could comfortably become a mine, if successful, of course. And we also have a huge data, and we spent, the year ordering, collecting, reviewing additional data from the geology department of Kazakhstan called KazGeoInform, and we're processing that now. And we firmly believe that from the results of that processing will give us additional drill-ready targets from a geochemical perspective, potentially some, far more advanced than already sitting in the portfolio. So hopefully that is some news that we can finalise the work on sooner rather than later and get that up to market as well. But I'm incredibly excited by the copper potential, both from a lower risk perspective of historical deposits, and from a very, very high impact perspective from drilling EM targets in an area that's got some of the best grades, some of the best grades on the planet.
Alex, really appreciate your time in giving us an update on E-Star Resources. Obviously we were speaking off air as well, and it looks like you've got a lot of exciting things happening, and it really looks a bright future for 2023. And we'd like, obviously, for you to come on later or sometime next year to give us an update.
I would be delighted to, Rob. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and if our audience wants to reach out to you and wants to obviously follow E-Star, how can they go about doing that? What social media platforms are you on?
Certainly. We are on, what are we on? We're on LinkedIn and we're on Twitter. And we have a website, of course, estarplc.com. And you can sign up for newsletters and news alerts on the website. So, yeah, please do follow us on any of those and reach out to me on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, well, we can include those in the show notes, accompany this anyway, for easy access to if our audience has any questions that they want to ask you. So really appreciate your time. All the best for 2023. We can have a catch up maybe mid next year with some obviously more news flow that you will produce. It sounds like an interesting, obviously, number of projects that you're involved in, and especially like the rare earths project, which is obviously really needed across the world. So obviously, like I said, wish you well in that.
Thanks so much, Rob. Appreciate it. I look
No
forward
worries.
to it next time.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Please share this amongst the mining community around the world. Like I said, in my when I'm interviewing junior miners, it's really important for us to get their exposure out there, so everyone knows what they're up to. It's a hard gig working in the junior space, and hopefully by you sharing the episode, it just helps. It helps a little bit for all these junior miners. So appreciate your continued support, and until next time, happy mining.